Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Pia Krishnankutty. I'm the beat reporter for the Ministry of External Affairs covering foreign affairs and diplomacy. And it's day 2 of the political crisis in Bangladesh, which is still unfolding. There have been a series of dramatic events. There has now been a rejig of the army. Many people have been shuffled out. We've also seen the former foreign secretary, the former foreign minister of Bangladesh, Hasan Mahmud, be arrested at the airport. And of course, India broke its silence when External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke on the floor of the parliament, saying that India has cautioned and had been calling for restraint during the Hasina government's handling of these protests, and that it is monitoring the situation closely. Now, today I have with me contributing editor, journalist, author Deep Halder to shed some light on these developing events on day 2. First question, of course, we've seen Hindu houses, businesses, temples being burnt by mobs, and there seems to be targeted attacks on minorities. Do you see them as soft targets now?
They have always been soft targets in Bangladesh during Hasina's time also and before. So anytime there's a disturbance in Bangladesh, Hindus have been soft targets, and of course they're soft targets now. Now, what happened yesterday was there were targeted attacks on Hindu homes and temples. There were attacks not just on Hindus, though specifically Hindus were attacked at certain places. There were attacks also on anybody who was seen as being close to the Army League and Hasina. Okay, 20 years of Hasina, so Bangladesh had become a literally a party state. So there is widespread anger against that. Some of what we saw happening in Gono Bhavan, Hasina's official residence, people running away with her saris and clothes and fish from her pond and all of that. So it also shows the anger against what many in Bangladesh saw in their prime minister, which is a dictator. But yes, there have been targeted attacks on Hindus. There have been images and videos that have been circulated on that is coming up on social media. I saw this morning that some are calling them out, saying that it's fake news. Some definitely are. There are some instances where some of the images and videos that are coming out are from the protests that happened before the quota reforms protest, which was very brutal. The protest was infiltrated by the Jamaat, and then who sort of brought in a certain kind of violence. Even the police brutality that followed as a reaction was very brutal. So some of those pictures may have been from the quota protests, but to say that there is no attack on Hindus in Bangladesh now is a complete lie. In fact, a Daily Star, the largest circulated daily in Dhaka, they put out a story this morning saying that, saying 28 districts in 28 districts of Bangladesh, Hindus have been attacked. It's a Bangladesh newspaper. Then there are Hindu, Buddhist, Christian Council, the apex body of the largest minority association, who has put out an official list of the districts in which Hindus have been attacked. Many of the videos that are coming out are real. They are not old videos; they are new videos. Some of them might be from a slightly older time, but yes, Hindus are very vulnerable in Bangladesh right now.
And how do you think this plays into the strategic, the geopolitics rather of this crisis? Because I suppose the interim government that we are yet to see in Bangladesh would not like to have the country's reputation marred in India.
Yes, and Dr. Yunus has said in so many words that he doesn't want Bangladesh's image to be tarnished and during this time. But having said that somehow somebody has to control the situation. If the army, the paramilitary, the police, they have to be deployed so that there is a of course it's there's to and fro in this argument, a lot of to and fro in this argument from various quarters. But there have been instances of people putting out statuses on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram that the majority population, which is the Muslim population, should go and protect mandirs and Hindu homes. But now that Bangladesh is in such a turmoil, how many places do you actually protect, and how do you protect? You can protect in Dhaka maybe, or in some of the big cities, but what about smaller places where the hinterland, for instance, where it's perhaps easier to attack Hindu homes, Hindu temples. But yes, I mean, the situation needs to be brought under control, and I'd like to say that it's not just Hindus who are facing this crisis. Anybody who's seen today in Bangladesh to be close to the Army League and to the Hasina dispensation is under attack.
Which is what we saw with the former foreign minister
Former foreign minister, imagine he had to he was trying to escape. I don't know though how he was trying to escape today, and now that it's there's violence on the streets, and people are hunting down people who are from the Army League, but it's a very vulnerable situation right now. And Hindus have, in the best of times, Hindus have been under attack.
Right.
2001, you'd remember, this was Hasina's time. She was completely in control of her country, and the narrative, it's a big piece of fake news, led to nationwide attacks on Hindus. So, and now in such turmoil, also Hindus, do not forget that though there are, I was told that there were many Hindu students among the protesters,
right.
against Hasina, but Hindus are as a community, they're traditionally seen as supporters of Army League. So that anger against Army League is also getting transferred on Hindus.
There's a spillover effect.
There's a spillover effect.
If I could also touch upon what you mentioned with basically affiliates of the Awami League being viewed differently now, being targeted.
Yeah.
What do you make of the rejig in the army? We've seen the telecom and communications department, the Major General Zia Ahsan, who was heading that, he was removed, he was dismissed, and we saw many others also taking different charges. What do you make of this?
I think it's very interesting. See, I think one thing Sheikh Hasina did was keep a tight grip on who gets promoted beyond a certain level, Major General and above in the Bangladeshi army. So it was all her men. Right now, people are trying to say very different things. People are saying that we were with the protesters. We said we won't open fire on protesters anymore, and we are with the people. We would say no to, at a certain point in time, we would say no to violence. But many of them were promoted, and many of them were very loyal to Hasina. It's not an election that Hasina lost and a new government came to power. She literally had to escape, flee her country. So in such a situation, I think even the army is trying to the army top brass is somehow trying to show their distance from Hasina. And trying to reach out to whoever, BNP Jamaat, the new dispensation that will come into effect. And but there would be some people who would find it very difficult to keep that image or whitewash their past so soon. So I think a little bit of tampering here and there to save their own skin is happening.
So this rejig is completely for optics.
It's completely for optics because somebody may be less guilty, somebody may be a little more guilty, quote unquote, from the eyes of the new dispensation, because Khaleda Zia is back. So she was under house arrest. So there will be Tariq was in London. He could not. He was in exile.
Right.
So now all of those things are going to change. So everything you said once, you have to now say the opposite thing. If you're a top brass in the army or whatever, wherever you are. So you would want to use. We spoke about the Army League minister who was trying to escape today. So ministers will have it very difficult. Hasina's ministers. But anybody else in any position of power would want to hold on to that position of power. So they would somehow try to say, no, we had been opposing her, or we found the way she dealt with the protests very problematic. So I think it's a bit of that.
The army chief yesterday, in his address, said, "Trust us, we will bring law and order back to Bangladesh." But as we described at the beginning of this conversation, 27 districts across the country have continue to face violence, especially minorities, especially Hindu businesses, temples, and so on and so forth. So the army still has to make good on its promise to the people.
Yes.
How important is that?
See, I just spoke, Pia, to 2-3 very interesting people in Bangladesh, right? And they said very different things about what's happening in Bangladesh currently. One thing they said is that the protest, the students, the quota protests, at least the students we saw and who came out and their coordinators, they had they had the popular support of the people. Some of them also said that the movement was infiltrated by the Jamaat. Right now, who are doing this violence now? Right, Hasina is gone. Army League cadre, I think, is trying to save its own skin. So who's doing this kind of unleashing this kind of violence in Bangladesh? If it's not the students, then who is it? So why can't the army act? I mean, if the situation goes out of control, maybe the police can't deal with it. Why can't the paramilitary deal with it? You'd know that Rapid Action Battalion is a notorious force.
Right.
They have been guilty of forced disappearances, custodial torture, and international sanctions have been placed on them. If there's such a effective and deadly force, what is the RAB doing? Why can't they? And like I told you that the protests have been it's not students really who are setting buildings on fire and attacking temples. Then who's doing it? And whoever's doing it, I'm sure some law enforcement body would be able to contain them. So why is it still happening? Why is a building being set on fire and how many? 25 people. We just saw that news.
Right.
The hotel being set on fire, 25 people burned to death. Why is this happening?
And I guess the next 24 hours will be critical as this interim government takes more shape.
Yeah.
But lastly, I wanted to discuss the reactions from across the globe. We've seen the UK call for a UN-led investigation into the deaths of students.
Yeah.
We've seen the US welcome the interim government and urge calm. We've seen Canada also call for a fair and impartial investigation into the student deaths. But there's also the question of where will Sheikh Hasina go? And reports indicate that she would like to have London as her final destination. Her sister Rihanna is there. The rest of the family is there. But that might be difficult as well, because diplomatic sources have told us that the UK doesn't have a provision specifically for asylum seeking. And first, someone who wants to seek asylum should move to the first safe country that is near to them. So where will Sheikh Hasina go is also a question that we will be exploring and is yet to be uncovered. But what do you make of her legacy? We're on day 2 of this political crisis.
Her legacy stands tarnished. People are bringing down her father's legacy, literally. People are defecating, urinating on her father's statues. Right? They're breaking her father's statues. This is
who's the founding father
who's the
of the
founding
nation,
father of the nation, and there would be, some would argue, there would be no Bangladesh without Sheikh Mujib. It would still be East Pakistan. So if people are doing that, and again, there's a huge question mark on this. The visuals we are seeing, are they common people, Jamaat Shibir, protesting students who actually are bringing down those statues? Okay, now it's a little far-fetched, but today I heard one of the voices from Dhaka say, it's the Army League student wing who are doing it just to discredit the interim government. It's a little far-fetched now that Hasina is gone, and there's a hunt for anybody who's associated with the Army League. But anyway, that's a view that it's Chhatra League and Army League's workers who are trying to somehow discredit this
that would be a risky
that would be very risky
agenda.
Game to play. Yeah, very risky agenda. And anyway, I don't think she's coming back in a hurry in Bangladesh. But you asked about her legacy. I think to maintain her father's legacy, maintaining Mujib's legacy and his idea of Bangladesh currently is the big question. The Bangladesh was East Pakistan once. It was Pakistan, right? It was the eastern part of Pakistan. It decided to be something else. It decided to be a country for Hindus and Muslims and other people who practiced other faiths. People came together rejecting Urdu and embracing Bangla. Bangla not just as a language but also as a culture. Very strong sense of culture, which is distinctly different from the Punjabi culture in what was then West Pakistan and is now the only Pakistan. That legacy is intrinsically linked to Sheikh Hasina's father's legacy, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's legacy. So if in this turmoil somehow some remnants of that legacy can stay, I think it's a great thing.
right now we will see a caretaker government take shape, but
Yeah.
somewhere down the line, Bangladesh will have to hold elections.
Hold an elections, yes.
BNP very likely will have the upper hand.
Yes.
Should Sheikh Hasina not return, which now seems, as you mentioned, very unlikely.
Yeah.
So with BNP having the upper hand, where does that leave India? How is India going to, and actually this is something we reported at ThePrint, what this entire crisis means for India. And if the pendulum were to swing back to BNP going forward, we in India have had past experience dealing with regime changes in Bangladesh. We will have to rely on that and, of course, continue the talks.
Yes, it's not as if India did not talk to BNP at all. It did, but it should have talked more. You cover the beat, how difficult it is to actually find out about meetings which are held clandestinely.
That's also because BNP doesn't advertise it either.
Yes, BNP, it doesn't work for its politics. It's a very anti-India politics that it has played in Bangladesh, and India is also as a neighboring country hugely unpopular among Bangladesh's youth. So I think India will have to now look at talking to BNP far more than they have in the past few years. And also there would be Rejig within the BNP. It is one thing to be in BNP at a time when Hasina was putting everybody in jail, but now that she's gone, I think whether if Tariq is going to return, who will be his number two? All of those questions will be brought up.
And on the BNP point, I think Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, subtly touched upon this in his address to Parliament, where he said that when these protests were happening over the last 6 months, India was also in touch with other political forces on the scene, urging calm, urging restraint and dialogue. That, I guess, is
enough
of a hint that New Delhi remains engaged with all political parties in Bangladesh, but picture abhi baki hai. So we will be tracking this important developing situation in Bangladesh. Deep sir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Pia.